Hi, Facebook friends, it's Char, and I went and saw a new movie that's out in theaters. It's called The Shack. I actually went and saw it Sunday night. I had the whole place to myself, and I went to the late movie around 10:30. And it's a good thing because I was a mess during that movie. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, I encourage you to go see it because it's a beautiful movie. Bring a box of tissues or something. But it's all about forgiving and getting to the point to realize where everybody's at in their path and how you can even forgive somebody who does the unspeakable. And this speaks to me very deeply right now. And I've got some notes here that I'm going to want to share. I'm going to start with a story. And in order to forgive somebody, a lot of it has to do with what we perceive their understanding is. For example, if you were feeding a 2-year-old lunch and they didn't like what you were serving and they just got mad, threw a tantrum and threw it at you, there's a whole different level of expectation from that compared to if you had cooked a really nice dinner and you're sitting down with your spouse and you sit down and they don't like what you had to cook and they're throwing it back at you. Complete different reaction probably going to come from you when you have a 2-year-old throwing something at you and you have your spouse or somebody who's an adult or in the same age as you. And a lot of that comes from knowing their level of consciousness. When we're able to understand where they're coming from and what consciousness is, it's the state of being awake, and this is the key, it's not just a being awake, like you woke up this morning to your alarm clock, it's awake and aware of one's surroundings and having the knowledge or perception of situations and your ability to change them. So a 2-year-old, while they might be awake, they don't really understand when they're taking a handful of the food that you just cooked and they throw it at you or they're throwing a temper tantrum, kind of what that impacts or what kind of impact that might have on you. But your spouse, there's a different level of consciousness there when you sit down after you cooked a dinner with your spouse and they're throwing it at you. And so when we can understand that, knowing that, you know, life is always presenting us opportunities to learn and to grow, that 2-year-old, you know, you might give some empathy and let them know you're disappointed, but you're going to help guide them, and you're not going to you might get a little upset and a little mad, but you know, you're still hopeful on where they're going to go and how they're going to grow, because there's still opportunities for them to learn. And then with your spouse, it's a whole different set of lessons there. And you know, your life will expand to the extent that you do. And so being coachable and being able to learn things and being willing to learn things and leaving your mind open and being like a sponge is part of what that 2-year-old is going to learn and hopefully launch into having better manners where they don't throw food at people. I know that as you develop your consciousness and your levels of awareness, there's a responsibility, and the responsibility is to help others, be patient. It helps you gain an understanding of where they're coming from. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you would think about, I know myself when somebody, when I'm in duress or I'm under stress and I feel like somebody is attacking me, we have 3 different means at that moment. We either fight, flight, or freeze. And when you can have a better understanding of what that person's intent is towards you, that's going to help you know which decision you want to have. So if you look at when you graduated high school and you had an understanding of math, and maybe it was algebra. I just saw somebody ask what movie it was. The Shack was the movie that I saw this weekend. It's a great movie. But when you graduated high school and you knew what algebra was, you couldn't go back and speak to a 2nd grader about math. I mean, you could, but you'd probably have to talk about subtraction and addition. You couldn't talk algebra to that 2nd grader yet because they just don't have an understanding. It doesn't mean that that 2nd grader is not smart. It doesn't mean that they have any less potential in life than you do. It just means that sorry, my phone was ringing. It just means that they haven't shown up and they don't have an understanding of what algebra could be. But you know, if we go back to that 2nd grader and we encourage them to keep showing up, you know that the potential is there that they could graduate and understand algebra. And I share this because there are times where people might be coming at you, attacking you, or you're feeling jaded or slighted. I know in my own life, I look back 6 months ago, I had somebody who created a lot of chaos, and I could let that turn internal to me and let it turn toxic and let it really eat me up alive. Or I can stay in curiosity and gain understanding of maybe where their understanding of their power is. Because, you know, you could go through life with a second grader's understanding of math. There's nothing that makes you or has you accountable to showing up to learn more. It's a choice, and that's where that free will comes into place. And so knowing that the person who has done this to me, or when I'm in the middle of being attacked or put down, understanding where they're coming from and maybe doing the best I can to stay curious and open and hearing things from their point of view will actually help me in the longer run more than them, but I'll still, try to understand where they're at, because what I know is when I was able to gain understanding of kind of where they're at and their understanding of awareness, meaning what their part is. We all have people around us who play the victim roles, and they're going to go through their whole life and blame everybody else for the stuff that goes on in their life. Or they can choose to take that internal and take the power back and take the responsibility and choose to make better choices in the future. And not look for the outside to blame, but to just go look in the mirror. And it's the same thing, a second grader, knowing what math is. If they choose to go through their whole life with just subtraction and addition, that's fine. Or they can continue to show up, and eventually they'll graduate and go on to do great things. And just like in school, being coachable and open to new things. And remember all along, it is never our job to judge. It is just our job to love. Again, all of this is insight that came after I saw this movie Sunday night. And it also reminded me, when you think about, or if you've ever visited a nursery and you have newborns there, have you ever noticed how, if you work in a nursery, you'll understand this, you have newborns and one of them starts to cry and then all of them start to cry. And it's kind of funny. People do it with laughter too, but that's because, especially when we're little, we understand that we're all connected, and we're all here to help each other. And that as soon as you realize in your awareness of your consciousness how powerful you are, because it's all about your perception of your place in the world, and when you claim that and you realize that your true power is within yourself, you'll understand that we're all powerful. And that when you are confronted with a situation where somebody's done you wrong, or somebody is just not working with the same knowledge that you have, it's a whole lot easier to forgive them and move on and even become a positive role model for them. Because if you go back, and let's use that math analogy, to that second grader, and you make them feel judged and stupid and not well enough, do you think they're going to show up next year to learn more? Or do you think they're just going to go through life with that level of understanding? And what I know is that a lot of people will just go through life with that level of understanding. And there's nothing you can do other than just kind of love them, encourage them, and if you can't do anything better than that, just walk away. So you guys, if you haven't seen the movie's called The Shack, and pack some tissues, because it is really going to put you in touch with, it's not a religious movie at all, it's probably a lot more spiritual. And there's a peacefulness, I know, once I walked out of that movie, that I hope you guys find. So you guys remember, we're all powerful, we're all connected, and I hope through this message you find something that resonates with you. And I would love to hear if there's something you want to talk about or have me talk about in the future, note below, because I'd love to hear it and start doing that. So you guys have a great day. Go love somebody. Bye.